Perhaps the most striking thing about those who feel set apart, those who sense in their bones that they are different, is not what they can explain about themselves, but what they cannot. It is the quiet, gnawing awareness that the world as it is never fully satisfies. From a very early age you may have noticed it. The games others played seemed trivial. The conversations that filled them with laughter left you strangely untouched. And the goals that seemed to animate their lives appeared, at least in your eyes, almost hollow. This sense of dissonance is not an accident. It is not a malfunction of your psychology. It is a signal, a profound whisper that you are not bound entirely to the same frame as everyone else. Human beings long for belonging. That drive is woven into the very fabric of our nervous systems. To be cast out of the tribe, historically, was a death sentence. Yet there are those who, despite this primal yearning, find themselves unable to blend seamlessly into the group. The very rituals of belonging, the endless chatter, the unspoken rules, the trivialities that glue society together, become a kind of prison. And if you have experienced that, you will know how haunting it feels. It is not that you despise others. It is not even that you cannot understand them. It is that their rhythm is not yours, and no amount of pretending can force the fit. Now, many people interpret this disconnection as alienation, perhaps even pathology. But I would argue that it is, instead, the first hint of a deeper calling. You see, if you feel out of step with the world, it may not mean there is something wrong with you. It may mean there is something more within you, something that the shallow structures of ordinary life cannot contain. It is precisely in that restlessness, in that inability to feel fully at home in the ordinary, that the seed of the extraordinary is revealed. Psychologically, this experience manifests as what philosophers might call existential dissatisfaction. You cannot distract yourself endlessly with pleasures or routines. You cannot lose yourself completely in conformity. There is always a remainder, a part of you that refuses to be silenced. That restless knowing, that unshakable inner fire, keeps pulling you toward questions others do not ask. What is the meaning of all this? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do with this life? These are not questions that pass idly through your mind. They are obsessions, burdens even, that refuse to leave you alone. And it is in wrestling with these questions that you begin to realize the very structure of your consciousness might not be entirely human in the ordinary sense. Because to be fully content with what is given, to eat, to sleep, to work, to reproduce, and to die, that is the default program. That is the rhythm of the natural order. But if you cannot be satisfied by that alone, if you hunger for something more expansive, more transcendent, then you are being called beyond the program. You are being summoned by a reality that does not belong entirely to this world. Now, it is important to note that this restlessness is not comfortable. It isolates you. It leaves you vulnerable to despair. But it also equips you with something invaluable, the capacity to see beyond the illusions that entrap so many. You see the cage for what it is. You see the play acting, the hollow performances, the artificial games that sustain social life. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That clarity is both a curse and a gift. A curse because it tears away the comfort of ignorance. A gift because it sets you on a path toward truth. That, then, is the restless knowing within you. It is the evidence of difference, the subtle but undeniable whisper that your origin is not entirely human. It is the first sign that you are chosen, not because of what you do, but because of what you cannot ignore. And so, if you have felt that haunting dissonance, that inability to surrender to the shallow comforts of ordinary life, do not mistake it for weakness. It is not your failure to belong. It is your refusal to betray what you truly are. If that restless fire within you is the first signal of something different, then the second is the unmistakable mark of separation. It is one thing to feel uneasy within the structures of ordinary life, but it is another to realize that this unease has consequences. The world notices difference. People may not always articulate it, but they sense it. They recognize, often unconsciously, that you are not entirely like them. And because of that, they react. Sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with respect, but more often with suspicion, rejection, or even hostility. The human psyche is wired to detect anomalies. We are tribal creatures, and tribes survive by conformity. Those who disrupt the rhythm, who cannot, or will not, play by the same rules, are quickly identified as outliers. Historically, such individuals were shunned or worse, sacrificed because their very presence destabilized the group. And if you are among those who carry this mark of separation, you have probably felt that pressure, the subtle exclusion, the sideways glances, the way people hesitate to embrace you fully. You are tolerated, perhaps, admired on occasion, but rarely understood. Now, this is a deeply uncomfortable experience, and for good reason. The need to belong is fundamental. To be pushed to the margins can feel like a wound to the soul. Yet here is the paradox: that wound is also the sign of destiny. The inability to blend fully is not evidence of failure, but of distinction. If you could integrate seamlessly, you would lose the very thing that makes you what you are. It is precisely because you cannot melt into the mass that you remain open to something higher. Think about this psychologically. The archetype of the outsider, the stranger, appears in every myth and every sacred text for a reason. The prophet, the visionary, the revolutionary. These are figures who do not belong. They are rejected by the mainstream, precisely because they carry truths too heavy, too disruptive for ordinary life to accommodate. Their separation is not incidental, it is essential. It is what marks them as chosen, as bearers of a perspective that exceeds the tribe's limited horizon. And it is not just myth. In the practical reality of your life, the moments where you felt alienated, mocked, or dismissed because you refused to conform, those moments were not random cruelty. They were confirmation. The world was signaling back to you what your inner restlessness already knew. You do not belong entirely here. You are cut from a different fabric. Of course, this does not mean that separation is easy. It carries pain, sometimes unbearable loneliness. But look carefully, and you will see that this pain is the very crucible in which your strength is forged. When you stand apart, you are forced to grow independently. You cannot rely entirely on external validation. You cannot lean on the comfort of majority approval, and so you must turn inward. You must cultivate depth, resilience, and clarity that others never have to develop. In that struggle, your identity is carved out, sharp and unshakable. It is tempting, of course, to resent this mark of separation, to wish it away, to bargain for normality, to long for the comfort of blending in. But if you surrender that difference, you betray the very essence that makes you chosen. You were not designed for easy belonging. You were designed for purpose. And so, when you feel the sting of rejection or the weight of exclusion, remember, this is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that you are set apart. The world sees your difference, and though it may fear it, that difference is the very evidence of your origin. If the restless fire within you is the first signal, and the mark of separation is the second, then the third is perhaps the most mysterious, the recognition that you are carrying something inside you that is not entirely human. Now, I don't mean that in the crude, biological sense, though it can certainly feel as though your very wiring is different. I mean it in the deeper, more psychological and existential sense. There is something about your consciousness, about your awareness, that does not fully align with the structures of ordinary human life. It is as if a fragment of something transcendent has been woven into your being. Most people live in the immediacy of the human condition. They are bound by instinct, by desire, by routine. Their sense of reality is contained within the material world. The next meal, the next paycheck, the next fleeting pleasure. And while there is nothing inherently wrong with that, it is insufficient for those who carry within them this dual nature. Because when you live with that spark, that otherworldly imprint, you cannot be satisfied by the ordinary. The rhythms that sustain others leave you restless, half-hungry, searching for something they cannot even name. Psychologically, you could call this an expanded consciousness. You are aware not just of what is, but of what could be. You see not only the surface of things, but the patterns beneath them. Where others find comfort in final answers, you are compelled to push further, to ask deeper questions, to peer into mysteries most people would rather leave untouched. This is both gift and burden. Gift, because it grants you vision. Burden, because it isolates you from those who cannot, or will not, see beyond the veil of the obvious. And here is where the duality becomes clear. You are human, yes, you inhabit a body, you suffer pain, you wrestle with doubt. But alongside that humanity runs another thread, a thread that feels alien, ancient, timeless. You are, in a sense, both grounded, unmoored, anchored in the material, yet called perpetually toward the transcendent. That tension is why you so often feel torn, split, caught between two worlds. Philosophically, this is the essence of the archetype of the stranger. You are in the world, but not of it. You participate, but you do not belong entirely. You are bound to a system that can never fully define you, because part of you originates elsewhere. And though that may sound abstract, you know it viscerally. You felt it in moments of solitude, in dreams that seemed to carry messages beyond logic, in flashes of intuition that revealed truths no one taught you. These are not hallucinations or delusions. They are glimpses of the part of you that transcends the merely human. But let's be clear, this dual nature does not absolve you from struggle. In fact, it often intensifies it, because the human part of you longs for comfort, safety, belonging. And the transcendent part of you demands growth, sacrifice, and vision. The two pull against each other, and you live in that tension daily. But it is precisely in that tension that destiny is forged. The weight of carrying both human frailty and transcendent spark is what produces resilience, wisdom, and power. So do not dismiss those moments where you feel alien within your own skin. Do not ignore the dreams, the intuitions, the haunting sense that you are not entirely explainable. They are not accidents. They are signals. They are the proof of dual nature. The evidence that while you walk among men, you carry within you a spark that is not bound by the limitations of flesh. Once you begin to recognize this dual nature, that you are both human and something more, you quickly discover that such recognition carries a price. And it is not a small one, because awareness is not neutral. To see what others cannot see, to feel what others cannot feel, is to carry a weight that the ordinary person is spared. It is both a burden and a gift, and the two cannot be separated. Most people can drift through life with a kind of unconscious ease. They accept the rules as they are. They allow themselves to be shaped by the environment, by culture, by habit. Their struggles are real, of course, but they are circumscribed within a smaller horizon. They rarely grapple with the fundamental questions of existence, because they are content with immediate answers. But you, because of that restless fire and that mark of separation, you do not have that luxury. Your mind doesn't stop at the surface. Your soul doesn't allow you to remain asleep. You are compelled to see deeper, to wrestle harder, to demand more from life. And that demand is exhausting. There are days when it feels like a curse, when the very intensity of your awareness leaves you isolated, restless, even despairing. Because the deeper you see, the less you can participate in the illusions that sustain others. You know too much to play the game without discomfort. And yet, you cannot fully escape it either. You walk between two realms, never quite at home in either. Now, this weight can break a person. There is no denying that. Many who carry unusual awareness fall into bitterness, cynicism, or despair. They numb themselves with distractions or bury their vision under conformity. And yet, when born properly, this same weight is transformed into extraordinary strength. Because awareness, when harnessed, sharpens the soul. It forces you to grow. It demands that you develop resilience, that you discipline your mind, that you cultivate depth in order to survive what others could never endure. Think of it this way: the human psyche is like a vessel. Ordinary awareness fills it to a certain level, and it holds just fine. But those with expanded awareness are flooded with more perception, more sensitivity, more vision. That extra weight threatens to crack the vessel, but it also pushes you to expand it, to strengthen it, to become something larger than you were before. The burden, then, is also the catalyst for growth. Without it, you would remain small. With it, you are forced to become vast. And this is the paradox: you must come to terms with the very thing that causes you pain is also the source of your power. Your capacity to feel deeply may lead you into suffering, but it is also what allows you to love profoundly, to create meaning where others see only emptiness. Your tendency to question relentlessly may rob you of comfort, but it is also what drives you toward truth. Your heightened sensitivity may isolate you from the crowd, but it is also what equips you to see the path they cannot. That is why you cannot reject your awareness, no matter how heavy it feels. To deny it would be to deny yourself. Instead, you must learn to carry it, not lightly, for that is impossible, but willingly, with the understanding that it is both cross and crown. It wounds you, yes, but it also sets you apart. It burdens you, but it also elevates you. And so the question is not whether you can rid yourself of this awareness. You cannot. The question is whether you will allow it to crush you, or whether you will allow it to forge you into what you were meant to become. If awareness is both burden and gift, then the natural question becomes, why? Why carry such a weight at all? Why endure the restlessness, the separation, the dual nature, and the pain that awareness inevitably brings? And the answer, though difficult, is this: the struggle itself is preparation. What you have endured is not meaningless. It has been the silent training ground for a task you may not yet fully understand. Think carefully about your own life. Every frustration, every sense of alienation, every season of darkness, it has shaped you in ways you could not have predicted. It has stripped away illusions. It has hardened you against despair. It has forced you to cultivate inner strength, because external comforts were denied you. The very fact that you are still here, still wrestling, still searching, is proof that the struggle has not destroyed you. On the contrary, it has refined you. It has been initiation. We often imagine destiny arriving in some grand announcement, a voice from heaven, a lightning bolt of clarity. But that is not how it works. Destiny is revealed in the quiet furnace of suffering. It is carved into you through disappointment, isolation, and resistance. You discover your calling not in ease, but in the places where you were brought to your knees, where you questioned whether you could go on, and somehow did. That is where the call hides, in the struggle that others dismiss as meaningless but that you know has marked you deeply. From a psychological perspective, this is the process of individuation. The self emerges not when everything is smooth and easy, but when it is tested, stretched, and forced to endure what seems unbearable. Struggle is the crucible in which identity is formed. And those who are chosen, those who carry within them a spark of something beyond the merely human, cannot escape this crucible. They must walk through it, because only in walking through it can they become capable of bearing the responsibility that destiny demands. And this is crucial. The struggle was never punishment. It was not some cosmic cruelty, nor evidence that you are somehow cursed. Quite the opposite. It was initiation. It was training disguised as chaos. It was the refining process that forged the tools you will need for what lies ahead. Without it, you would not be ready. Without it, you would lack the resilience, the clarity, the depth of vision necessary to fulfill the call that rests upon you. This is why you must reinterpret your past. Do not look at the pain of your life as wasted. Do not look at the seasons of loneliness, the rejection, the endless questioning as empty suffering. They were the curriculum. They were the hidden apprenticeship. They taught you endurance. They deepened your compassion. They sharpened your perception. They carved into you the very capacities that ordinary life never demands, but that extraordinary purpose always requires. And perhaps this is the most difficult truth to accept: the call does not come after the struggle, it is born within it. The very things you thought disqualified you, the wounds, the failures, the endless dissonance, are the things that prepared you. The call was there all along, hiding in the suffering, waiting for you to realize that none of it was random, that every ounce of it was shaping you into someone who could carry more than the average person, someone who could bear responsibility beyond the ordinary. So when you look back on your life, don't just see hardship. See training. See initiation. See destiny weaving itself through the cracks of your pain. Because that is what it was doing all along. If the restless fire was the beginning, and the struggle the hidden training ground, then this, awakening, is the threshold. Because there comes a moment, often quiet but undeniable, when you begin to see the pattern of your life not as random suffering, but as a kind of design. It is the point where memory sharpens into recognition, and recognition into responsibility. You realize that you are not here merely to wander. You are here to fulfill something. You are here not just to survive, but to awaken. This awakening is not like flipping a switch. It is more like the slow clearing of fog, the way shapes emerge from mist. At first you sense it only dimly, as an intuition, a strange conviction that your existence carries weight beyond what you've been told. But as you attend to that conviction, as you allow yourself to take it seriously rather than dismissing it as fantasy, the fog begins to thin. And suddenly, what once seemed like unbearable alienation takes on meaning. It was the signal of difference, the mark of being set apart. What once felt like endless struggle reveals itself as preparation, the training you require to shoulder something greater. Awakening means seeing that your life is not just happening to you, it is shaping you for what is ahead. And with that realization comes power. Because once you accept that you are not bound to the fate of the ordinary, you no longer see yourself as a victim of circumstance. You begin to understand that your very dissonance with the world was the evidence of your origin, and that your pain has been the sculptor carving you into a vessel for purpose. Now, destiny is not some static script already written in every detail. It is potential. It is possibility waiting to be claimed. The awakening is not merely an act of discovery. It is an act of decision. You must choose whether to live small, to numb yourself, to retreat back into conformity, or whether to step fully into the path that has been carved into you through all your years of struggle. And that decision is not trivial, because once you see, you cannot unsee. To deny your awakening is to betray the deepest truth about who you are. And this is where responsibility sharpens. To awaken is not only to see your own difference, but to recognize that you have a role to play in awakening others. You were not given this depth of awareness, this dual nature, this long training in silence, merely for your own sake. You were given it because there is work to be done. Work that only those who have endured what you have endured can carry out. The burden has prepared you for leadership, for creation, for influence, not of the shallow sort, but of the kind that reshapes lives, even generations. Do not think this is easy. Awakening demands sacrifice. It demands that you leave behind the comforts of pretending you are ordinary. It demands that you carry your awareness into action, that you translate your pain into purpose, that you accept the loneliness of walking a path few will understand. But the alternative is worse. To ignore the call is to live half asleep, to waste the very gift your origin has entrusted to you. So the final question is not whether you are different. You already know that. It is not whether you have suffered. You already have. The question is whether you will awaken fully, and in doing so, embrace the destiny that has been waiting all along.